Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll call our council meeting of May 16th to order. The first thing we're going to do is I'd like as a motion to move into closed session to discuss matters of a personable matter or an identifiable individual under section 239 of the Municipal Act. Moved by Deputy Mayor Clark, second by Councillor Powers. All in favor? Carried. Okay, I'll get Heather to stop the Okay, usually there's a pop-up, Heather, that says recording in progress. It didn't pop up this time, but I'll assume that we're good to go. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting of Otonabee-South Monaghan on May the 16th. The first thing of our council meeting is a public meeting under section 34 of the Planning Act to deal with 3 zoning bylaw amendment files, all as a condition of consent. And I see our planning consultant on the screen, Kent Randall. I'll turn it over to Kent to go through the reports with us. Good evening, Kent.
Good evening, Mayor Taylor, and good evening, council and staff. This is, as the mayor noted, a public meeting under section 34 of the Planning Act. And I will just read out the preamble as required. If a person or public body that would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan before the bylaws pass, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan before the bylaws pass, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So notification for these applications were circulated to all required agencies and landowners within 120 meters of the properties at least 20 days prior to these meetings in accordance with the applicable Planning Act regulations. Notification was also posted on the township website. So the first public meeting concerns an application, and actually all 3 are related to consent applications. The first one, which is application Z17-21. The applicant is Zister. The location of the subject property is in part of lot 17, concession 9, Otonabee Ward. And the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from the rural zone to the rural residential zone, and to rezone, and that's, pardon me, the rezone the proposed severed parcel from the rural zone to the rural residential zone, and also rezone the proposed retained lands from the rural zone to the site-specific rural 51 exception zone. So as I noted, the zoning bylaw amendment application is required as a condition of consent. Consent was granted conditional approval, and that is application number B7321. The severed parcel, which is approximately 0.4 or 0.3 hectares, is located on Providence Line, and the balance of the property, because it does not meet the minimum lot area of 10 hectares for a rural lot, will require an exception zone to recognize the deficient lot area. And of course, the reason for rezoning to rural residential is to permit the reduced lot area for the severed parcel. That's basically that, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council or public may have.
Thank you, Kent. Excuse me. First of all, members of council, any questions to our planning consultant on this application? Seeing no questions, it is a public meeting and there are other members on the screen. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support of the application? And I see the applicant is trying to connect to audio, so we'll just give him a moment here to see if that's possible in case he wants to speak. Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition of the application or to seek further clarification? Seeing none, I see Jim Zister still trying to connect the audio. But it looks, council, it looked pretty straightforward, and the minutes can reflect the fact that the applicant is on the screen. It looks pretty straightforward. Is council prepared to make a motion to receive the report, approve the recommendation, and refer the application to the bylaw section of our meeting? Councillor Powers will move that. Deputy Mayor Clark will second it. Any discussion on the motion? Call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving down to the next application, Kent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the second application is concerning application number Z04-22, and the applicant is Sullivan. And the purpose of the location of the lands are concession 10, part of lot 32 in the Otonabee ward. And the purpose of the application is to rezone the severed property. So it's as like the one before and the one after, condition of consent. And the purpose is to rezone the severed property from rural to rural residential. There isn't much more to this. It's simply a zoning schedule change, and obviously to recognize the smaller lot area and frontage required to permit the severed parcel. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thanks, Ken. Just for clarity, the only condition here with approval is rezoning of the severed lands, correct?
That is correct.
Questions to our planner from council? Seeing none, is there anybody at this public meeting who would like to speak in support of the application? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition or to seek further clarification? Seeing none, the minutes will reflect there is nobody present at the public meeting to speak to or against. Is council prepared to make a decision? Councillor Powers, go ahead.
That the report be received and that the recommendations be upheld, and we move it to the bylaws section of our meeting.
And Councillor Allen, did you ever hand up a second that? You did. Okay, thank you. Second by Councillor Allen. Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, you're doing well, Kent. Moving along to the third application.
So the third application, also concerning condition of consent, is zoning bylaw application Z05-22, and the applicant is Cornish. And the lands are located in part of lot 23, concession 4 of Otonabee ward, at the address 1911 David Fife line. And as I said, purpose is to rezone as a condition of consent, application B6521, and the zoning, the rezoning that will take place on the property will be the severed, will be rezoned from rural to rural residential. And then portions of the retained lands will be rezoned from the rural zone to the environmental protection zone. And that's to fulfill the recommendations of ORCA, which are to recognize some of the non-evaluated wetlands on the property. So it's simply just sort of an administrative rezoning on the retained lands. As with the other ones, the rezoning for the severed is required to recognize the proposed lot area of the severed parcel, proposed lot area and lot frontage. And that is essentially that one. And I'm, of course, happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Well, we've taken it easy on you so far tonight. I don't know whether it's going to be 3 for 3. Any questions to our planners from members of council? It appears you're going to get off easy. It's a public meeting. Anybody here at this meeting wanting to speak in support of the application? Seeing none. Anybody wanting to speak in opposition or to seek further clarification? Again, the minutes will reflect nobody spoke to the application at the public meeting portion. Is members of council prepared to make a decision at this time? Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, I'd like to move that we receive the report and that we go ahead with the rezoning and move it to the section, our regular meeting of the bylaws section.
Bylaw section. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Howie. Discussion on the motion? Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. The agenda reflected there was no public or agency comments on any of the 3 applications. Ken, you've done very well. 3 applications in about 8 minutes.
I give all the credit to Ken Scullion for preparing those materials for council. So I'm just the messenger. Thank you.
And I see Jim Zister. Jim, I see your name on the screen. I don't know whether you can hear us or see us, but your application has already gone through the on the agenda. It's been approved and referred to the bylaw section. So as usual, there's I think the 20-day appeal period, but council has approved the zoning bylaw amendment for your consent application. Do we have, I think you saw a hand up, and I can't remember whose that was. It's not up now. So I guess really we just need a motion to adjourn the public meeting tonight. Councillor Howie, Deputy Mayor Clark, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. And then we will resume our regular council meeting in about 30 seconds when we can get that pulled up. Okay, is everybody ready to proceed with the regular council meeting tonight? Good to go? All right, we'll call our regular council meeting to order at 6:11. We did our closed session at 5 o'clock, so we'll move right down the agenda to number 3. And that is Councillor Allen will recite the land recognition. Turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I'm wondering if Heather, our clerk could share her screen, please. I am unbelievably having a problem with my computer. Just the agenda, Heather. I have to have it before.
Wait a minute, I don't have it pulled up.
This is unbelievable.
I could share my screen if you'd like.
Councillor Allen, did you say you had it on your phone as backup?
I did. I'm frantically here. I lost.
That's okay. I mean, if it's
I'm losing my. I don't know
Councilor
what's-
Powers, if you have it handy, if you wouldn't.
Yeah,
mind.
just throw it up. I love that. I want to.
Sure.
Should have it memorized.
There you go. I think you should see it now, Mark.
Yeah, if you just scroll down.
Yep.
There it is. Thank you, Mayor Taylor, and good evening, members of council and staff. I'd like to begin tonight by saying the land recognition. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the township of Otonabee-South Monaghan is located on the traditional territory of the Mississauga peoples. These are Treaty 20 and Williams Treaty lands. We encourage everyone to educate themselves on the details of these documents and the influence of the First Nations in Canadian history. The Council of Otonabee-South Monaghan recognizes these contributions and the commitment to the actions which demonstrate respect for the environment in keeping with First Nation tradition, reflects the security of the next 7 generations. Thank you again.
perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is announcements, and I actually have 3. They're all pretty exciting. I'd like to remind members of council and anyone listening that the Hiawatha Powwow is scheduled this year after a 2-year absence. It's going to take place in Hiawatha First Nations, May 21st and May 22nd. So I certainly intend to attend, and any member of council or the public is also very welcome. The public washrooms at the fire station are now open after almost a 2-year closure. I think the public will be very pleased at that. And I thought that was worthy of an announcement. There's been some pressure on the township office to get them open, and we have, and we hope they can stay open for the season. And again, on another positive note, I'm very pleased to announce that Pumpkin Fest will be back in the village of Keene on October 15th. It's been 2 years absent, and I know the entire village and indeed the area, it's our signature event. And the area is really looking forward to seeing it back. I certainly am, and I'm very pleased that the future looks positive enough that we feel that it can be, hope we can host it again this year. So that is the announcements. Number 6, disclosures of pecuniary interest. Any members have a disclosure to declare at this time? Deputy Mayor Clark, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, going down to, I did put my conflict of interest form has been put in, and it is regarding section 15.1 of our agenda regarding an application being put before council this evening.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, and you have filed the requisite forms that go along with that declaration. Any other declarations from any other members of council on the issues before us tonight? Seeing none. Okay, we're going to move down now. We have no minutes, either council minutes or committee or board minutes to review at this meeting. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Allen, Councillor Howie, all in favor? That will be the agenda we'll follow for tonight's meeting. As I said, there's no minutes to review. We have no delegations. We're going to move right down to 12.1. Staff reports from Public Works about a roadside power unit tender result. I'll turn it over to Craig.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. In front of you, and I'm sure everyone has reviewed that we successfully put out a tender for a roadside power unit, and in front of you is a report with the recommendation that that tender be awarded to Colby Equipment for what is called an Entergreen Communal Multifunctioning Machine. So it's a multi-purpose roadside unit, and really looking forward to taking advantage of its versatility and some of the programs we have in terms of roadside maintenance going forward. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Craig. And this piece of equipment was in our capital replacement budget for 2022. And is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And the budget amount was it 280,000?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions. First of all, Councillor Howie, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just a quick question. Time period, I guess, is probably an important thing with everything going on these days, that everything seems to be back ordered. Any idea when we might get it?
Yes, with this recommendation, the lead time for this particular piece of equipment is actually 4 weeks. So we were very lucky to be able to secure a potential piece of equipment that fast. So,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Clark. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, through the mayor to Craig, could you just speak to, there was only 2 bids come in. Is this due to the fact that this is such a unique piece of equipment? And could you just elaborate on the differences between the 2 that did put their bid in? Thank you.
sure. Through Mayor Taylor to Deputy Mayor Clark. Yes, so I don't think having the 2 bids, receiving the 2 bids, what we tried to do was we tried to take some of the specifications that we wanted, but really recognizing that there are still some conventional tractor units that do have the capabilities to do some of the things that we were looking to do. So we wanted to try to keep the tender open enough to still accept those sorts of those bids as well. In terms of the 2 submissions, Essentially, they met all of the specifications that we required, with the exception of the second one. There was a few somewhat critical specifications that it didn't meet, but the second bid that isn't shown here, I would say met 90, 98, 99% of those specs that we spec. So very close, just missed out on a couple of those things.
If I may just follow up then,
Go ahead.
can Craig, where with all the backups, and as you say, you're going to get this within 4 weeks, which is great. So I am more concerned and dealing with equipment, and I'm more familiar with farm equipment. So we just blew a door out of a tractor, and fortunately, $1,000 ticket, but fortunately, it is a model that is made, you know, on North America. Are these two models, are they both made, you know, within North America that we can get parts? Are we looking at parts coming from, I'm concerned about parts, I guess that's what I'm saying, if
Sure.
they aren't a North American build.
Yeah, essentially the components to the equipment are made from all over the world. So there's certain components to each of these pieces of equipment that are made, you know, overseas. The second piece of equipment, or the one that's being recommended, is actually manufactured overseas. But many of the parts that it utilizes are North American made parts. The second one is North American made, but it does have some overseas parts. There's quite a supply chain and distribution network throughout North America for both. So I don't foresee any issues in terms of procuring parts or establishing a parts source at any point in time. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Powers, go ahead. And I think Councillor Allen has his hand up. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I think Councillor Allen had his hand up before, so I don't mind if he had questions.
Okay, if you can, Councillor, if you remember to use a hand function, then it just allows me to keep track of that a lot easier. But go ahead, Mark. That's the applause. Thank you.
It's a hand, right? Like, I mean,
Go ahead.
technical challenge tonight. So thanks, Craig. And it definitely sounds like a very unique and specifically built kind of piece of equipment. I'm not that familiar with it, but a bigger, kind of a picture is starting to form in my head. I did have a couple of questions around the tendering process and or the fact that we only received one bid, or one compliant bid in this case. The bid, and that's only, and that's the concerning part to me. I mean, with specialty equipment, it is challenging sometimes to tender. I can appreciate that. Was the bid strictly basically a low bid tender? You know, you're either compliant or you're not compliant with the specs, or was there room for evaluation? And that was one question I had, because it didn't really say that in the report, and I wasn't quite sure. So I thought I would ask that. So that's one of my questions. And if so, kind of where did we come up with the specs to sort of build that tender from? Only because I'm always looking for more than, you know, one compliant bidder in this case, but definitely interested in the equipment, and it does seem unique. So it probably poses some challenges in tendering process. So I can give you those couple of questions.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Through Mayor Taylor to Councillor Allen. So yes, and I'll try to remember all the parts to the question. So we were really diligent and mindful that, so initially we looked at a bunch of different multifunctioning power units that are sort of on the market right now, and also looked at some tractors. And we sort of handpicked some specifications generally that we wanted. And what we tried to make sure of was that the language that we were using in the specifications was broad. We did have some verbiage on equivalency. So if there was any specs that were very pointed, we would say or equivalent on the market. We wanted to make sure that we had that in there. The I'm trying to remember what your other questions were. We had the equivalents in there. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that it was broadly written so that we would try to get as many bids as we want. Obviously, we were happy with 2. We would have been thrilled with 3, and certainly happy that we had 2 proponents that brought forward 2 bids that almost entirely met specifications, but there was a couple key ones for us that unfortunately the second bidder didn't comply with. So I'm not sure. I think there was another part or 2 to your question.
Yes, thanks, Craig. And I think I'd asked, what process led to developing those specs. Like it is from, an expenditure of funds and in, openness to our vendor community. It is something that is inherently important to make sure, it is open in that sense. But speccing is a tough thing on specialty equipment, and I can appreciate that. So I think that was it. I asked if how we kind of got to that spec, and I think you kind of answered that. So that's fine. I guess the challenging part is just to hear that they're very close. The other bidder is close, but then we see it show up as a non-compliant. So I don't know if there's something we can do in the future to consider that. The other question, I guess, follow-up question on it, because it is a piece of equipment, I think that's new to the township and probably new to a lot of us on council. To try to understand what exactly it's going to do and and how it's going to perform the work for us. It sounds like a sort of functional piece of equipment, more versatile than a simple tractor might be.
Yeah.
I just wonder if you could expand a little bit on that. I am interested in hearing that, because this is the first time I've sort of laid eyes on one of these pieces of equipment.
Sure.
So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Through Mayor Taylor to Councillor Allen. So it's a multi-functioning power unit, roadside power unit. And essentially, this particular power unit or power units of this kind, they can be used as a roadside mower, but also a brusher. The new brushing heads are built to not only cut roadside grass, but to also cut overgrowth. So trees that have been growing for 2 or 3 years, up to 2 inches, up to 3 inches in diameter. So it'll really be a good a follow through behind our brushing program, where we have where we use our ProMag head on our excavator, or we have a third party come in and really brush everything back. With this unit, we can come in a couple of years afterwards and cut those re-establishing trees, cut them back with this roadside power unit. And the boom technology has come a long way as well. So we can actually reach out up to 24 feet with this if we need to, and to cut those trees back. But it also comes with the versatility to carry other pieces of equipment. So a sweeper, snow blower, snow pusher, a loader bucket, curb and gutter sweepers. There's multi attachments that it can be used for, and we thought that was prudent to procure a piece of equipment that can adapt to the different maintenance or the changing maintenance requirements that we may have in the township with different developments coming on, and us assuming those assets down the road. It would be nice to have a piece of equipment with that versatility. So that's essentially what it is. And certainly I know there's a lot of interest in these types of units in the surrounding townships and surrounding municipalities that I've had lots of conversations with over the last few weeks. So I know it's certainly a bit of a mind shift in terms of how we do roadside maintenance and the equipment we use.
So they've got two more questions, but I do know for council's information that at the roads committee, we discussed this and the comment was made that it should do a cleaner, neater job of a very controversial practice that we engage in. That's roadside brushing. So it might make roadside brushing a little easier for the public to accept. And I hope that's right. Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Craig, honestly, I had to actually look it up as to what the device was because I had no idea what this thing was. Fascinating little piece of equipment. I'm curious. I agree with the modular components that are available for it. I think that provides a lot of versatility for the department moving forward on particular needs. I'm curious what is included with it. I mean, you can do grass cutting, you can do brushing, you can do sweeping, it's got a bucket I think you can put on it. Are we getting the full gamut of modular attachments, or did we handpick just a couple of things that were critical for us to replace that? And I guess the secondary question is, are we going to not need to replace other equipment in the future once they're surplused because of this tool, I guess you could say? Does this provide additional efficiencies because of its modular components?
Through Mayor Taylor to Councillor Powers, thanks for the question. So this unit comes with a boom flail mower. So the flail mower is dual purpose. As I said, it cuts grass. It also does brushing. So that's all it comes with right now. There is a bit of a plan, and there will be probably a report that will come to council, regarding the sale of the tractor that this would replace, and potentially using those funds for an additional sweeper in 2023. What was the second part to your question?
So the second part was, because of its modular nature, are there other assets that when they become end of life, we may not need to replace it because we have this tool that is so modular that it essentially covers the, two tools or two tractors that we would have had in the past. It's now covered with one. Just curious if there's additional efficiency benefits.
Yeah, there may be. The ProMac head that we have on the excavator is a few years old now, and it does succumb to age like any other piece of equipment. Being that this has such a reach that is quite similar to the excavator, if it performs in terms of brushing as well as the excavator can, then there may be a potential that we wouldn't need the brushing head on the excavator. There may also be some opportunities to clear snow from cul-de-sacs, whereas we would typically use either a pickup truck or a bobcat. So that may replace some of those functions as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Okay, Deputy Mayor Clark can wrap it up. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Okay, a couple of questions have been answered, and that is the brusher. So we're not getting rid of the brusher yet, Craig, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then can you tell me where this company, Convoy Equipment, where are they out of?
You're muted, Craig.
They're in Bradford, Ontario.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. And what other things would we be looking forward then to having, looking forward, maybe not in a positive, what will we have to buy in order to accommodate this machine? So we'd look at a a sweeper. We'd have to buy that unit. I'm just trying to think ahead of what accessories that we'll be looking for in cost.
I would say through Mayor Taylor to Deputy Mayor Clark, I would say at least in the next 2 to 3 year horizon, it would be the sweeper. That's a program we've run year over year, and this tender did account for the hydraulics that you need to run a sweeper properly. And I know that's something that we ran into trouble with the current tractor, was the hydraulics just weren't there to drive the sweeper, so it was hard on the equipment. So I would say that the sweeper would be a really beneficial option for us to have, at least in the very near future.
Okay. And the other thing, when you mentioned cul-de-sacs I know that the big trucks trying to get into cul-de-sacs for snow plowing. So I would expect that we would be looking, or does that accessory come? Do we have the plow that will work on this machine so we can get into those narrower places?
Through Mayor Taylor to Deputy Mayor Clark, no, it doesn't have a push blade on it for snow, for removing snow or pushing snow at this time, but it does have that function available.
Okay, would that not be an asset that we would utilize very quickly?
Certainly, yeah, potentially. Just budget wise is another consideration for sure. So yeah, I can see there being value, and I think I mentioned to Councillor Powers that cul-de-sacs, it could certainly replace a pickup truck with a blade, or even a Bobcat that we use, or a loader sometimes, because we can get a loader bucket for this as well.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And if we're looking at efficiencies, I think council would support that.
Yeah. And if I may add, Mayor Taylor, just a couple details for peace of mind. The warranty that was also spec'd out, the Colby warranty on this piece of equipment is 2 years or 3,000 hours, and that's 3 times the warranty of the other proponent in terms of hours, and that's really important to us as well, to have that warranty in our hands. So just wanted to state that.
Okay, very good point. Okay, so with that information, is council prepared? I'm looking for a motion if council is prepared to make the decision to, it just would be adequate to receive the report and approve the recommendation. Councillor Howie is going to make that motion. Councillor Powers is seconded. Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll call the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving down staff reports, an update on our telecommunication policy. I'll turn it over to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So the report is before you, and the information and updated policy is attached. In the preparation of this particular report, I knew that it was mentioned that the county may have a policy or an updated policy. I spoke with the county and confirmed it by email. They do not have a telecommunications tower policy. I did speak with all of the other lower tier municipalities for their policies, and had a conversation with each of my colleagues. Our policy, after I reviewed some of the other communities, our policy that was initially drafted in 2013 seemed to cover the majority of those particular points that other communities' policies followed. There was some housekeeping work done to the existing policy, changing of titles and names and that sort of type of thing. But really the policy that had come before council had been primarily intact here, that you're going to see with the new policy. One of the items that specifically in the notice of motion was in our previous policy, and under H, which is commitment to accommodate other communications providers on the tower where feasible, subject to usual commercial terms and industry candidate conditions of license. So that was already in our policy, and certainly One of the things that, in my conversations with my colleagues is, we're a land use approval authority, and our council is. Ultimately, the Industry Canada could go ahead and just approve applications for towers and not deal with the local land use authority, which would be us. But our policy is in place, and I think that we certainly can administer the needs and the wishes of our local residents and our council through the policy that's here before you. And if there's any questions, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd be pleased to answer that.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Any questions to our CAO? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Greg, through the mayor, just under 12, 12, may include, we start out with the preamble, letter of understanding may include.
Right.
I don't like may in any kind of, it's wishy-washy, a bit of wiggle room. Can we, a letter of understanding shall include?
In this particular regard, there may be components related to that telecommunications tower application that would, an item A through H may not be applicable to. And so that's why the may is there, right? So
yeah, I understand that. Can we put shall include if applicable then? I just like shall. May I've always found in anything legal, it's too much wiggle room. So if we can put a letter of understanding shall include if applicable.
Mr. Mayor, through to the Deputy Mayor, that's a possibility, but I guess as I mentioned in my preamble, these particular providers could go directly to Industry Canada. And so we have to make this, we need to have this as a consultative type of approach so we get the information that we do. And if we are dealing with very strong language around shall, they may just decide not to deal with us. And that's would be my concern.
You're muted, Joe, but I will go ahead. I think
Yeah.
So they could, under any circumstance, go forth, and we are under the that's the level above us, and so be it. So I will, at the end, after discussion, make that recommendation because they can go to the CRTC anyway. So I'd rather have stronger language than we do have it in there, so we don't end up. And the only other thing I'd like to comment is on 12H. And the same thing, the township requires a commitment to dedicate space on the tower for other communication providers to provide open access provisions in accordance with the CRTC regulations. So I think we just want to be very clear. The last application that come forward to us mentioned that they had approached another tower provider and they were not interested at all. So the CRTC is asking for this, that people do cohabitate, and I just like stronger language under that section as well. So I'll make both those recommendations once other people have had a chance to speak to it.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, respond back to the deputy. If we make these too restrictive, they will not come to us. They'll just bypass us. And so we get nothing. And so what I want to make sure that we get is an approach where we engage them and we get them to go through a consultative approach with the township and our users and our land users. If we make it too restrictive, then they'll just ignore us and go right to Industry Canada and we'll have no recourse. So I'm really concerned about that, and I want to express that concern to council.
Okay, any other questions to our CAO on this report? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Powers. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Taylor. I would agree with the deputy in the sense that we definitely want to encourage the consolidation of providers onto towers where we can. I think that, if we can have fewer towers in the township and still have the same level of service, that's an ideal situation for everyone. It's interesting, Greg, that you say that, in that they have the ability to completely bypass us. So they're under no obligation to engage with us at any time. Is that correct? There's no obligation at all.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councilor Powers, yes, we have a protocol in place, and they like to try to respect the local protocol. But if it becomes too onerous, then they will just go directly to Industry Canada, and we would lose our ability to provide comment with respect to that. And I guess the secondary thing is we're going to see more now that the broadband strategy is out there, but at both the federal and provincial government. We're going to see more companies out there bringing broadband to underserviced areas. And so the province and the federal government through Industry Canada want to encourage that. So they will be issuing letters of concurrence to providers to do this. And so I think it would be a natural thing that they would just bypass us, and because of that nature. So I want to make sure that we try to engage them and continue to engage them, and that we have been successfully engaging them. I think we'll be approached by more providers, and we can express our comments to them about, cohabitation on towers and those sort of types of things. We'll lose that window if we're too restricted.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because that's a delicate balance there for sure. Because we
really
definitely,
is.
yeah, because we definitely, I do support the deputy mayor's position on the shall versus may, because these are things that we would want them to include in working with them and partnering with them. But on the flip side, I can appreciate, Greg, where they may look at that and say, oh, they want me to do these tests and these surveys and these reports. Oh, and I have to set up a cohabitation agreement. Okay, no thanks. You guys are making this way too onerous. And I was trying to work with you, and you guys are not going to work with us. Okay. Yeah. So now, I'm somewhat torn here, because I do want to try and encourage the cohabitation.
Mr. Mayor, so that's the thing is, how do we, by having a policy that encourages them to participate, we get our message across. And with the pressure for them now about wanting to build this infrastructure, and our residents wanting this type of service, if we make it too onerous, they'll just bypass it and build it themselves, and we'll have no voice. That's what I'm really concerned about.
The council, just before we move on to the next speaker, I want to make sure that we're not creating an issue where one doesn't exist here, because I don't think there's a distinct difference when you say something, a letter of undertaking may include, but is not limited to, or if you say a letter of undertaking shall include where appropriate. I don't know that there's really any difference there. In neither case are you making a firm, hard statement. So if you want to put in there a letter of undertaking shall include, that's a firm statement. When you say shall include when appropriate, I don't know that that's a different message than may include. So this is where I'm torn to that, and I do think, quite frankly, that H under that is quite clear. It shall include a commitment to accommodate other communication providers on the tower. So I just want to make sure that we're not making an issue where one doesn't exist. Go ahead, Deputy Clerk.
And I'm quite fine with that if we go back up and we put shall include where feasible. That gives a bit of wiggle room.
It does. I don't know that it's saying anything. I don't think it's any different than may include, but that's going to be up to council.
Okay, so
my question, Mr. Mayor, through the deputy mayor, is who's going to determine the feasibility? And so everything comes to the chief administrative officer to manage this particular policy. And I guess, I'm going to ask the tough questions that council wants me to ask under the policy. And I think that council should be certainly comfortable with that is, but I would have no idea about, shall be feasible. I would have no concept about like how would I determine that? Like everything's going to come to council anyways under this particular application, and they have to make that particular overture to council. And so ultimately council makes the determination under the policy.
So through the mayor to our CAO, to Greg, I understood that when it is better for these providers to have the blessing of council when they go to the CRTC, that it is weighted, and if they have the blessing of council, that certainly helps their application. So just that's one point. My other point is, under this commitment to accommodate other communication providers on the town where feasible, well, who's determining if it's feasible? Or how do you determine if it's feasible?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, in that particular case, it's going to be the company is going to determine whether it's feasible, because if they're going to be loading up the tower with their equipment, there may not be room in there for it to be feasible to co-locate other folks. So that's where the feasibility would come in, and they would advise council of that.
And there's where the problem lies, because they are so territorial. They will load up and make sure that they don't have to accommodate. And that's my concern.
Okay. So are there any other points of clarification or concerns with the policy, the new revised policy, which, as Greg said, isn't a great deal different than our existing policy?
No.
The only one, Greg, that I think I'd like to see in there is at no point does it say that the applicant has a duty to consult. And I know that all planning applications, we automatically send them to the First Nations. I know that, but I think I'd like to see it in the policy. So it's very clear, we have it written, and there's no question that we have requested it.
And Mr. Mayor, we do that as a matter of course. So that's not really a big, we can put that into the policy under one of the items that are under duty to consult.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to hear a proposed motion from a member of council.
Can I, through the mayor,
Sure.
Just one more question. Can you point out on this policy, I had asked about that the township reserves the right to decline the installation of a tower where the builder / site owner has no guaranteed tenant on the tower. Where is that addressed through the mayor to our CAO?
That would also fall under number H, right? So is that they have to provide a commitment to accommodate. So they're not going to be, if they're going to make an application, they have to make an application for it, and because they have to get Industry Canada approval. They would not be coming forward to us with an application for just a tower and hope to rent it out to somebody. It's very specific that they have to follow this process, and they're going to be they have to, in their application process, they have to show their ability and the type of equipment to serve. So, and ultimately that's Industry Canada's decision, right? So, and I see Nick nodding his head. So they can't just build a needle, and so they have to come to us and tell us that they're building it and for what purpose, and then that particular time, then council can ask that question and then give your consent or non-consent as a part of that particular application and proposal process in front of council.
That's my thoughts. Is if an application ever came forward for just a tower with absolutely no purpose to it, I can't imagine that the township would support it. But
So then, Mayor Taylor, why can we not just add that to that, a commitment that the township requires a commitment? I mean, to be very clear.
Sure. I guess there's no reason. The township requires,
A commitment to dedicate I'm sorry, the township reserves the right to decline the installation of a tower where the builder/site owner has no guaranteed tenant on the tower.
I guess,
It's very
part of- and that's, well, the language there, Mr. Mayor, is we have no authority to decline. Industry Canada has the authority to approve. We would have the authority to not support, but we could not decline an application. Because that's federal government and that's Industry Canada's realm.
So then we changed our language to reserve the right to not support.
Yeah, if you want to give me that language and council feels that it's appropriate, it can be included.
I just want it to be clear because it has happened in other provinces. So that's why I want it to be clear. But if you're more comfortable, that reserves the right to not support. And then that's the direction of council. I will make that motion that we add that as 12G or H, just over I.
why don't we, before I'm looking for a motion. I see Councillor Allen's hand up now, so I'll let Councillor Allen wrap it up. Then I'll come back to you, Bonnie, for a proposed motion with additional changes. Okay, and we'll see if we can get some support and move on from this. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks. Thanks, Mayor Taylor. And I too, I'm in support of what Deputy Mayor Clark is saying. I don't want, and I don't know if they build them and build towers on spec without tenants and those sorts of things. But I would like to see, this amazing coverage with so very few towers popping up in our township, I guess would be the greatest thing. But I'm just feeling like that with this conversation is becoming a little too cumbersome in the sense that, I mean, we have an inherent right not to support anything that comes to council, do we not? So I'm just trying to strike the right balance here. And I just thought this was getting messy, and I don't have the solution. I support what Deputy Mayor Clark is saying. I guess I wasn't really fussy on the right not to support because I think we already have that right. So I'm not sure. I think there's maybe better language in that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. It kind of makes the policy kind of messy or cumbersome.
So if I could comment on that, Mr. Mayor, just quickly. So that's why I said is that right now the policy, we ask the proponents to come before council and state their case. And so council has that right under our current policy and has for several years, the right not to support. So it's already inherent in our policy. And so that being said, you already have right to give that an opinion. Now, that being, secondarily, it's still Industry Canada's exclusive right to approve anything that they wish to improve, and they're going to get more applications now as a result of the broadband strategy. So I want to make sure goes back to my comment right at the onset. We want to try and engage these particular folks so we can give, as a land use authority, council's opinion based on the residents that we serve.
Mark, did that answer your question or your comment?
It does, yes. I'm kind of searching through here to try to come up, with a thought in my own, but I'm not seeing it. At the beginning, I was looking for ideas around shall support, I don't know. I mean, I support the concept of what Deputy Mayor is saying. I don't know that may doesn't do it. We still have the right not to support it when it comes before us. Ultimately, it goes to Industry Canada for a final decision or approval anyways.
We have the right to not support an application.
Of any kind,
Period.
right?
Of any
Period,
kind.
right.
Period.
Period, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Councilor Howery and then back to Deputy Mayor Clark.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, no, I agree with our deputy mayor of what's going on with it. But on the other hand, I don't want to be the last township that gets a tower or gets any internet because our restrictions are too high. But in the meantime, we still want to have the least amount of towers for as much internet as we can get. So like I say, it's a very hard decision, and you know, that's just my opinion on that one.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I can make a motion, Mayor Taylor.
Yes, I think I think
Okay.
now is a good time for that.
Okay, so I would propose that we support the policy and with the following changes. A letter of understanding shall include where feasible, but is not limited to. So basically the same idea, but just a bit stronger. And then going down to H, commitment to accommodate other communication providers on the tower. So it's a commitment to, if they can't do it, fine, but they do have the commitment, and just take out where feasible. So a commitment doesn't mean it's sworn in stone, but they are going to try to commit to it. So just take out the where feasible. And then that basically leaves it cleaner. I think it was Councillor Allen made the point it was getting a bit messy. And so with those two revisions, I would move it if I can get the support for that.
Before I ask for a seconder, would you consider a friendly amendment and add duty to consult?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and that would come under, where would you like that to come under, Mayor
Okay.
Taylor?
Up earlier, there is a list of requirements. that-
What section?
Well, let me try to find it.
Okay.
Three,
Okay,
process
Would you-
3.
so in addition to that, then,
Just the duty to consult. The
Okay.
proposed development is environmental, archaeological, topographic, historical, or other significant features, and add the duty to consult in there.
okay,
Consult First Nations.
okay,
Okay, so Deputy Mayor Clark has put forth a motion that we approve the policy with a couple, I'm going to call them fairly minor revisions. If council is clear on those revisions, I'm going to ask for a seconder. We're willing to second that motion? Councillor Powers. Questions to the motion? Questions at all from members of council? Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and staff is clear on those changes. The minutes can reflect what they are. You got that, Heather? Thank you. Okay. 14.1 is something that happens once every 4 years now. Lame duck period. The clerk tries to explain how they happen. Questions to the clerk on this one? Seeing none. It's really not that complicated, and Heather has laid it out, I think, fairly clearly in the report. Okay, so the anticipated motion there would be to receive the council restricted lame duck staff report for information, and the council direct the CAO to prepare the necessary bylaw. And then there's a couple of conditions which delegate authority that would normally be held by council outside of council should we be in a lame duck period. Councillor Powers, are you prepared to make that motion? Thumbs up. Deputy Mayor Clark has seconded that. Any questions on it? Must have done a good job, Heather. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. This next one is when Deputy Mayor Clark has declared a conflict. Go ahead, Bonnie.
how do I know when to come back?
I think that, well, first of all, I think Heather can
Put
exclude
me
you
in the
from the
waiting
meeting,
room?
and then you'll be in the waiting room and we'll come get you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The minutes will reflect that Deputy Mayor has left the meeting. due to a clear conflict of interest. We're going to go back to our planning consultant for report B55-22. Go ahead, Kent.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Taylor. So the application, the township received a consent application from the county for a proposed severance located in part of lot 21, concession 7, Otonabee Ward. The proposed severed property is just over an acre. And it's from what we've reviewed, it would meet the policy, conforms to local policy, consistent with the PPS, conforms to the growth plan. The county supports it or supported it through the preliminary severance review, and we agree with their assessment. The proposed severed parcel is the second severance that this particular property is eligible for. And so from that perspective, it can be supported, and certainly the way that it's been proposed is that it's of an adequate size, and it will avoid any natural heritage features or their setbacks. So our recommendation to council is that the council support the proposed severance and provide the corresponding municipal appraisal form to the county. And of course, as part of that, we're proposing conditions, or township proposed conditions, one of which is cash in lieu of parkland. And the other condition is that the severed lot, much like the other ones tonight in the public meetings, be rezoned from rural to rural residential zone.
Thank you, Kent. Any questions to Kent on this? Kent, has the county already provided assurance that access permit can be issued for this severed property?
Mayor Taylor, I haven't seen anything to that effect. I'm going to presume that would be a condition of consent. If you'd like, I mean, we could, if council is concerned with access, that's something that we could provide as a condition. But not to my knowledge that the county is doing that.
So, and that's the reason I asked. This is a county road. County will be tasked with approving it, but we almost always have with severances on county roads that the county approve an access permit. An access permit is can be provided.
Right.
So I mean, we don't have to have it in there. I wonder if county had talked about it, because county will not approve it if access can't be. It'll be part of the report.
Yes, yeah. Mayor Taylor, that's correct. And through this process, county public works is circulated, and they provide comments. They also provide comments with the preliminary severance review, and there didn't seem to be any issues in that regard. Okay.
So is council prepared to make a decision on this application? Councillor Allen, go ahead, Mark.
I would recommend that we approve the recommendation as written in the report.
So the motion will be to approve the application subject to the 2 conditions in the report.
That's correct.
Correct. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howe. Any questions on the motion? Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Kent. I'll just give Heather a moment to find our deputy mayor. Magically appears. Okay, so we're going to now move down to the bylaw section of our agenda. Could I get a motion, please, that bylaws 2022-25, 26, 27, 28, and 29 be read a first time? Councillor Allen and Deputy Mayor Clark. All in favor? That's carried. I'll ask the clerk to review the bylaws with the exception of bylaw 18.4. We may have our CAO review that one.
Bylaw 2022-25 is your planning, your zoning bylaw amendment, Z 1721 for Zister. 2022-26 is your planning, your zoning bylaw amendment, Z 0422 for Sullivan. 2022-27 is your planning, your zoning bylaw amendment, Z 0522 for Cornish. I'll skip over 2022-28 for the CAO. 2022-29 is the council, the lame duck delegation of powers. And the 2022-28 is the planning, the safe harbor developments, subdivision phases 2 and 3, and I'll let the CEO speak on that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather and Mr. Mayor, members of council. So this is, this bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a subdivision agreement, which is attached for phases 2 and 3 of safe harbor developments. This particular agreement has been in negotiations for, I'm going to say, 5 to 7 years, and certainly it's a pretty technical document, and so what it sets out is for them to do their work in the subdivision. There is some requirements in there that are pretty heady requirements. So one of the requirements in this one schedule is that the prior to, as it says in the bylaw number 3, is that the mayor and the clerk shall not complete the execution of the subdivision agreement until confirmation is received from the solicitor and the CAO that all matters required to be done prior to execution have been satisfactorily completed. So a big part of this particular thing is the posting of security. And if you read the document around the security, it's it's a little more than $1.1 million in security at this present time that need to be posted for works that need to be completed. So that's certainly a fairly significant requirement. And so council could pass this particular agreement this evening, and really we would wait until the conditions, as it said in the bylaw, are satisfied to the solicitor and to the engineer. So I wanted to point that out. The number that you have in the back in that particular schedule is subject to about a 35-page engineering document, engineering financial summary that counts every piece of sewage pipe, water pipe, linear meter of curbs, so many cubic meters of different types of materials, and placing and testing and all of those sort of types of things. So our process in that particular regard is that our engineer reviews a request that would come from the engineer for the developer, and it has to be certified in order for them to reduce any security. So council could approve this particular agreement tonight, and in the course of a couple of weeks, the developer could complete some works, and we could have them certified and have the security reduced, let's say by $300,000 or $400,000, but still they'd have to post that, and the solicitor would and the engineer would have to confirm that before we would proceed. So I just wanted to make sure with council, there's also a couple of other things in there just of note. They're smaller things. Section 5.5 talks about a park going in one of the blocks. They have to have it graded by the 15th of June. So it allows us to go in and do our installation. And 14.2, I believe it is, identifies what has to be done as far as the grading, the seeding, the fencing for the park. So just so that you're aware that there are some minute details like that, but there's also some larger, grander details related to posting of securities and those sort of types of things. So I'll if there's any questions by council, I'd be pleased to answer them, Mr. Mayor.
So Greg, if any member of council wanted to know how we arrived at that figure for our securities, there's a 30-page engineered document available. They can come in and read it.
If that's what's going to put them to sleep at night, that's a possibility, right? So.
All right. We'll start off with Councilor Powers. Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Yes, definitely lots of material information. Greg, I'm just curious. I know that there had been proposals from the developer about possible changes in what they were looking to have in the different phases in terms of the structures, the services. How has that been accommodated in those changes that were being initially discussed versus what was initially, I guess, what was in the first phase, planning of this project?
Mr. Mayor, through the council part. Yeah, thanks for the question, because what we're going to do is council probably, we hope in the next subsequent meetings, are going to see applications for under site plan control. And those are going to set out how those particular blocks, this is talking about the blocks being created and how they're going to be serviced, right? So how are they going to get water and service to those blocks? And then the next part of the process are site plan agreements. So there will be, we're hoping on the 6th of June, depending on how we can move it along. There's a site plan agreement for approximately 30 townhouses along the new Safe Harbor Way that have to come. And that site plan is reviewed by our site plan control officer, who's our chief building official, but it's reviewed by our engineer and by our solicitor and by ORCA and by all those agencies. So we hope to, that review's is complete. There's also another block of about 6 townhomes that go along Paul Rex Boulevard where it meets Safe Harbor Way. There's about 6 townhouses. That is subject to a separate site plan control agreement. There's also a site plan control agreement and a zoning bylaw for a commercial block, which is south of Safe Harbor Way, the new Safe Harbor Way up against TV Road. And they're proposing a self-storage unit complex to go in there. So that would be subject to a site plan agreement and also a zoning bylaw amendment that they've applied for. And then the bigger block, so those 3 would probably come to council soonest. And then in the bigger block, that's where we start talking about those multi-unit buildings. And that's still, there's still a lot of conversation to happen around those particular things about density and the type of development that's going to go in there, and as well as the secondary portion, which is an office block. So those 2 other blocks are still, they're still under discussion, but the other 3 should come to council relatively quickly. And then as you go up farther, up the new Safe Harbor Way where it connects with veterans, you'll see more site plans come along up there as we get into the single family housing as it goes up there. So council will be engaged here over the next few years on how those individual blocks are going to be proposed to be developed. So does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I can assure council there has been a tremendous amount of time and effort spent by our lawyer, our engineer, our planners, and our CAO just to get it to this point. A lot. This has been a long time coming. In fact, the developer would have preferred this come before council before now, but we had some people who were just felt it wasn't ready, but they feel it's ready now. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, and through you, Mayor Taylor, to staff, huge amount of work. When you see a $1.1 million retainer, you know there's been a lot put behind it. That number is not picked out of thin air. It's picked out to make sure that the development and what is proposed gets done, and the taxpayers are not holding the bag if there are ends that need wound in. So thank you. Have been down that road before, and pleased that that it's finally come to fruition, but also that, and I won't be coming down to read the report in depth, but leave that with the professionals, and happy that all those people, legal, our engineers, our CAO, have all been proponents of putting this together. I do feel comfortable with that. So thank you. And Greg, I'll ask you that 1.1 million, was it 1.1 or 1.2 you said there?
It's 1.138, I think it's in the report. But that's what's remaining out of almost 4 million.
Yes.
That was going to be put in. So we still, they've done a lot of work that put services in phase 2, 3. So, but there's still a little bit of work left to go to get them to where we're comfortable, because in the end, in this particular subdivision, they're going to make an application at a point in time where the municipality will assume all those roads,
That's right.
which is different than Ambria, which is a condominium, and the condominium corporation will own all those roads. So, so we have to make sure that we're, as you said, ensuring that we're acting in the best interest of the taxpayer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So are there any further questions from members of council on this or any of the bylaws? Seeing none, then could I have a motion that bylaws 2022-25, 26, 27, 28, 29 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed with the corporate seal attached? Seeing Councillor Howie and Councillor Powers, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we have nothing for correspondence. We have nothing under the information package. I believe there was 2 things under other matters. The first is council meetings. Greg, you had some information I think you wanted to share with council before we decide about our June 6th meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, want to make sure that I'm not muted here. We're recommending that the June, at least the June 6th meeting that we meet virtually. We've got a lot of information that we need to go through with council, and it's going to be with, as I mentioned, with everybody, that Mr. Scullion is going to be leaving our organization and going to work for the county as of the end of May. So I've got him, he's on vacation this week, but we've got him chained to his desk. And so we want him to get all these planning reports, a whole bunch of planning reports out, and we're looking to do them on the 6th of June. And so that's why it would make it a little better for us to deal with them virtually and get them out. And Mr. Scullion has agreed that he would come and represent them. He'll write the reports and everything, and he and Kent will come in and represent those things. That's why, so we're recommending that. The second thing that we're doing is we want to start, we'd like to start at 5 o'clock on the 6th of June and do it virtually. Council's been asking me about where our report is related to our job evaluation and those types of things that we had Gallagher Benefit Services do. The Personnel Committee met this morning and got the initial report. So we want to bring that report to council in closed session starting at 5 o'clock on June 6th. So that's our goal. If we, in the interest of sort of moving forward, if we can do those things, and if that also, if council's wish includes doing something virtual and the second meeting in June too, and just look at all of the months of June, we're open to that discussion.
Greg, that the report that you referenced in closed session, the consultant will be providing that report.
The consultant, yes. Yeah, the consultant will be meeting with us by electronic.
Right, yeah, okay. So discussion for members of council, are you okay with that? Staff are recommending and hoping that we can meet virtually on June 6th. Not seeing any objections to it, so I'm going to assume that's a yes. I see a thumbs up. Okay, there was something else under other matters and it's escaped me. What was it? Oh, was it the parade?
We were going to ask about Canada Day, but I don't have the information from the fire department.
Right. Okay. That was it. Yeah. We have to talk to the fire department to see if they intend to host the Canada Day parade. Our fire chief is away this week. So Greg's going to look after that and we may have more information about it at our next meeting, hopefully. Anything else? See, all it needs is a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Allen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, council, staff. Good meeting. We'll adjourn at 7:23.
Thanks, everyone.